Okay, today we're going to discuss how to capture photographs of your artwork. And I'm going to basically review a document that is in the Google Drive, paragraph by paragraph, so that I can give a little bit deeper explanation. Now, if you want to find this document, if you go to Google and you're sitting on the Artist Gallery pages, and then if we go to the Google Drive, right now this document is sitting here. However, that could change. It will change more than likely because there's a lot of activity of changing and setting up the documentation on Google Drive for various things. So if you would like to download this, you can click on the PDF, and then if you go to the little download button here, you click download and it will download it to your computer. So I'm going to actually use an original PDF version which has a little bit higher resolution than what's on the web. So we're going to discuss how to do this process, basically step by step, and if you have any questions at the end, I'll explain how to ask me questions and we'll go from there. Your very best results, of course, will be had by using at least a consumer level DSLR camera, which is the size camera that you would typically associate with the older SLR film cameras. If you don't have one of those, then a recent point-and-shoot camera will likely suffice very nicely. Even a 4S or better iPhone would work. Ultimately, though, it would be better to use a DSLR that you can have much more control over what you're doing. So sharing with a friend might be an option. Now, our primary goal for the usage of this material goes to various places like postcards and signs and also to the web. So the standard that we've settled on is to have a final image of no smaller than 1800 pixels on the long side. So a standard 4x6 would be 1800 pixels by 1200 pixels. But that second side will depend on what your original image is. And that would be at a 300 dpi resolution or PPI. So in order to get to that point, you need to set your camera higher in the number of pixels. So at least 2500 to 3000 pixels on the long side, because remember, we're going to crop this image before it's being used. And also remember that what we're asking for is for tag needs only. This is not something that you're going to be able to blow up to wall size and print. If you've got work under glass, then you need to take it out to photograph it and or photograph it before you put it under glass. Same thing goes for anything that has a highly reflective glossy media or medium over top of it. You would be much better off to photograph the artwork before you apply that final glossy coat. Otherwise, it's going to make it much more difficult to deal with the reflections that you might get as you take the capture. Biggest hint I can give you about your camera is read the manual first. Try to understand as much as you can before you get started. One thing to keep in mind is that digital is about pixels and the print world is about dots per inch. They basically mean the same thing. So when we say 1800 pixels by 1200 pixels at 300 dpi or PPI, all that means is that can be at 300 PPI/DPI, that's printable. And anything we would need for the web, we would actually re-res down to a smaller pixels per inch. Okay, so your camera settings, first of all, you want to set the capture size, so how big the image is actually going to be. And so the first setting that you would really want to deal with is the quality of the image. So in general, you always want to set it on fine, JPEG. You could have a camera that says super fine, but at least the highest resolution JPEG that your camera allows. The second setting for capture size is actually the size of the capture itself, and most likely you're going to want to use either large or medium in order to get that image size of at least 2500 to 3000 pixels on the long size, because remember, we're going to crop this. The camera will actually tell you how many pixels it's going to capture at large or medium. Small is probably not an option. But if you have any doubts at all, always go larger, not smaller. Let's see. Moving on to the metering setting. You would want to set metering at multi, which means it's looking out at everything that's in the scene and making a decision about what the best average exposure would be. Multi-zone metering does a better job for that purpose than spot metering or center weighted metering, which will fool the camera in different situations depending on what the art looks like itself. So you're always safer with multi. Same for focusing. Instead of focusing on one particular area, the multi-focusing equivalent will tend to give you a little bit better results. Although spot focusing would work, but I would stick to multi. You want to use a consistent aperture. We're looking to use f8 as our aperture setting, which is the basically the middle of most lenses. On your camera, you're likely to have a setting, a dial setting that either says A or AV or something similar. You want to make sure that means aperture mode rather than automatic, because on a lot of DSLRs and on especially point and shoot cameras, A means automatic, and that's not what we want. So read your manual, get it on aperture priority. The ISO is basically what used to be called ASA, which is the speed of the film, and this is the speed of the capture that's being made on the chip that's in your camera. You want to set it at its lowest number, which is generally going to be 100. You don't really need to go below 100 if you happen to have something that's lower. Some models only allow you to go to 200, but that's fine. You do not want to set it at auto ISO. You want it to set at a specific ISO. As I said, the f8 aperture setting is where you want to be. That's generally the sharpest point of most lenses. And on a 35mm camera, it's generally easier to figure that out as whether you're at f8 or not, but most of the point and shoots will allow some manual settings where you can actually set it at f8, and that's what you want to do. f8 gives us plenty of depth of field. Shutter speed doesn't really matter, because what matters is the aperture, and we're going to be on tripod. It's really much better to be on a tripod rather than hand holding, although you can get by with hand holding if you've got a fast enough shutter speed of a 60th of a second, or better, you should be at 1/125th or higher. Many cameras most point and shoots have steady shot or image stabilization built in. Sometimes you can turn that off, sometimes you can't. On consumer grade and higher professional grade DSLRs, they all will have the ability to turn off steady shot or image stabilization, and when you're on a tripod you want to do that. Otherwise it fights against itself. If you're handheld, you definitely want to have image stabilization or steady shot turned on. As far as the focal length that you want to use for taking your image, you want to be around 50 millimeters at a 35mm equivalent. If you're using a full frame DSLR, then 50 is right where you want to be. If you're using a consumer grade DSLR, then typically it's a 1.5 or 1.6 crop factor. Therefore, if you set the focal length at the 35 mark, that's generally going to give you the equivalent of 50 millimeters. You can go longer than that, up to 100 on a full frame, or what would be 65 to 70 on a consumer grade. Going lower than 50 could present some issues with the way the image actually looks. 50 is more of what's considered normal. Color balance, just leave that on automatic because that can be corrected in post-production well enough. Always turn the flash off. You don't want flash to come on at all, so make sure your flash is turned off. Repeat, we want to be in aperture priority, not on automatic, and we want to be at f8. Many DSLRs in particular allow you to save your camera settings. They'll have 1 or 2 or 3 different places where you can excuse me, save your settings. And if that is the case, then if you save these settings you're using for your art, then you don't have to reset your camera every time you do it. Also, you want to use a cable release if at all possible. As long as you have enough shutter speed, pressing the shutter release button would be fine, but a cable release all gets away from those issues of any sort of movement. We want to photograph outside. We do not want to use flash, and we normally would not need a polarizer. We want to place the art on an easel and so that we can hold the art in a level to the ground position and a vertical position, or 90 degrees to the ground, just like the walls in your house. Lighting conditions work in either full shade or full sun. Bright overcast is ideal for color photography. You don't want any dappled light where there's sun and shade on the image. That's just a no-no. Dark overcast is okay, but bright overcast is better. And if you're in full sun, you will get a little bit of washout on your colors, but that can be corrected in post-production. So you want to get your artwork level and square. So you want it level to the ground and 90 degrees vertically by manipulating your easel so that you can get that art as level and as vertical as possible, because this will save all kinds of issues down the road as far as distortion in the image. First thing you want to do is buy a small builder's level that allows you to level the image in both directions, and I'll show you an example of that. That's also in the PDF. So this is a small builder's level right here, and notice it has leveling in the horizontal position and the vertical position. And this first image shows you how to level horizontally, and in this image over here you see this red line. By moving the back leg of the easel, I was able to get this as vertical as possible. Anybody who's interested in the tomatoes and how my wife grows them, you'll have to talk to her, but I'll give you her phone number. Okay, let's go back over to the document. It's best to set that tripod and the artwork at the same level as your camera, because it just makes all this easier to get everything set up. One of the issues is also getting the camera lens parallel to the artwork, and one way that you can accomplish that sort of is by, this is a view from behind, whoops, didn't mean to do that. This is a view from looking through the viewfinder. That's not the one I wanted either, sorry. I want this one. This is a view looking from behind the camera, and at my setup with my level here. And actually in this case I put a piece of foam core behind the art, and in order to get a more accurate triangulation. So by triangulating from the edge of this or the edge of that, either one, down to your lens, and then back over to the other side, so this direction also, and as long as that tape measure says roughly the same, or as close as possible to the same amount of inches, then you are more likely to have accomplished being square with the artwork. Some experimentation and some practice will make it easier for you to see that real close. You also want to get the camera dead level. So we'll go back over and look at these photographs, and you can purchase from camera stores this little bubble level here, which will allow you to level your camera horizontally and vertically. That's assuming that your hot shoe for your flash is level with your the chip in your camera, which it normally is. These are available. We don't have many camera stores left in our area, so you have to order it online. And I put a link in the document that tells you how to go to B&H Photo or any other place you'd like to go. And these are only anywhere from $10 to $25, depending on which type of level you choose to get. But you want one that will allow you to level both horizontally and vertically. And remember to fill the frame as much as possible with your art, so that there's just a little bit of area above and below. And in some cases, if you have a square image, you're going to have more area on each side. That's okay. If you get it top to bottom, where there's just a tiny bit of extra space above the artwork and below the artwork, then that's fine. One thing to remember is what you are seeing on your LCD screen is not an accurate representation of the colors in your capture. LCD screens are the lowest common denominator, and you can change the brightness level so that you can see what's on your LCD in sunny weather. So it really is not what you're finally going to see. You can only tell that once you've captured it, loaded it up to your computer, and take a look at it in some piece of software that will show you what the actual image looks like. However, many cameras, especially even some point and shoots, will give you what's called a histogram, and this is a histogram, and you can view that by, as you review the image, usually you have a setting that will allow you to see your histogram. And the most important thing to know about a histogram is that you do not want pixels piled up against this right side, because this dark area represents the pixels in the image. If you pile them up against this right side, that means you have blown out highlights, which means all your whites do not have detail in them, which is not good. You can better get by with piling up some pixels against the dark side, because that means they're going to go total black in the final print or the final representation on the web, and sometimes that's not a bad thing at all. This particular histogram here shows a normal, quote-unquote, distribution of the image data, or pixels in the image. And unfortunately, normal can come in many different looks. This is just one of them. But here again, the important thing is you don't want pixels piled up against the side of the left side or the right side, but certainly the right side is the most critical. The other thing, as far as making sure that you don't have blown off pixels, is to bracket your images so that beyond taking normal exposures, or what your camera is suggesting as a normal exposure, then many cameras should have a setting that allows you to do a plus or a minus as far as an adjustment to the exposure. So if after you've done a couple at normal, you may want to do one over and one under at least, so that that will give you an opportunity to ensure that you've not blown off pixels. Or with the one over, if your camera is not metering more correctly or evenly, you might actually wind up using that one, but typically it's going to be the normal or the one under that you're going to use. These are just duplications of the images I've already shown you about how to level your art and how to get it vertical, what it looks like from behind, and this is what it looks like through the LCD. Now if you look really close at this, you can see that I'm not exactly dead level. I'm pretty close, but I'm not dead level. And because of that, I'm going to have a little problem down here in the corner as far as this line is not quite straight. And that also could be due to the fact that I'm not totally parallel to the artwork. Don't worry about that. Just we'll we'll fix that in post-production. What to do with your images? First of all, don't crop them, and do not post-produce them in any way. Don't process them at all. We'll take care of that. The labeling convention that we're recommending and would like to see used is last name, your last name, the number of the art, and the art name, all lowercase, no spaces, no caps, and use underscore separators. Makes it much easier to read the file name. Numbering would normally start at 1. This is an example of Bowers _3 _ Florence Waterlily. So last name, image number, and the name of the image. If we're asking for anything different, we'll let you know. When you're uploading images, which we'll look at in a different video, you want to upload the original and the bracketed images to your album or to wherever we're specifying that you should upload these, because it may be to a show album or some other activity. By having those choices of the brackets, it gives us an opportunity to select which is the easiest capture to deal with. This link is missing right now. That'll get fixed because that's going to link you to the instructional video of how to upload your images to Google. As a fallback situation, some of the point-and-shoot cameras, or most of them, have what's called a scene mode, and within that scene mode, what the camera does is it takes the decisions out of your hands. For instance, if you're shooting sports activity, what the camera is going to do is favor shutter speed and raise ISO and lower or open up the camera's aperture to a wider aperture in order to capture the action. And it'll do something different in portrait mode, and you could have a close-up mode, you can have a landscape mode. There's all kinds of different scene modes available in these cameras. And if you're just confused, try that first and see if that works for you, and it might turn out to work just fine. You do want to make sure that your camera is set to give you the largest size JPEG and the highest quality JPEG as possible. Sometimes scene mode dumbs that down, so that could be an issue. So it'd be important to know the final file size of that image, and we need it to be over a megabyte, and somewhere in the 1.5 to 2 range is probably going to be better. So that's it. If you have any questions, you can contact me at cwbowers@mac.com. That's cwbowers@mac.com. If you have a simple question, if it's complicated, we're going to need to talk on the phone, and we can arrange that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.